face. So it just depends on the day. The backs of these ones don't bend down as far, so I never wear them to work because, like, they'll slip off so easy. And so I'm like, I have to wear the ones that stick better to work. But even though these are technically more fashionable.
Totally understand. And I think maybe we're live? If this worked
Okay,
right.
let's see.
Yes, we are. I'm going to share this real quick
Yeah.
and get it up on
Oh,
Twitter.
good. I shall do the same.
Perfect. There we go. And we got people starting to show up. I like
Perfect.
it. Okay, I just have to remember where I'm actually supposed to be in frame. Okay. So I
I think
guess
I'm good.
yeah, you're centered pretty well.
It's I think that's a little better.
Slowly sneak it in there. So, as
Sneaky,
everybody
sneaky.
can guess, this is what we're talking about today. I'm super excited.
So am
Shae
I.
and I are going to be doing a big collaboration later this year, so we decided to reread the Lunar Chronicles, and it's been 5
And to
years
make
for
it
me.
part of Tell It Again was just a
Yeah,
fun way to do it too.
exactly. Because, I mean, it's been 5 years for me, and I believe 7 years for Shae, since we've both originally read Cinder. And so we were ready for a reread.
It was time.
Yeah, and I guess we could just jump into it, and you can start with your overview on everything you thought about it.
Well, should we do a brief description in case somebody stumbles across this that hasn't, like, heard about this series, even though it's forever old? No. All right, so Cinder is essentially a retelling of Cinderella in which our main character, Cinder, is not only our Cinderella character, she is also a cyborg. And she has, like, a cyborg foot. That's, like, the biggest noticeable thing. And obviously she gets info on, like, her view screen and stuff that's in her retinas, or her eyes, whatever. I never know how to exactly... Her net screen, I think, is what they call it. Like, my brain did not want to come up with that for a minute. But
Yeah.
yes, let's see. So we have her, and she lives in what they call the Commonwealth, which is essentially this world's version of, like, an Asian style culture. I want to say more like China is what my gut wants to say. I
Yeah,
don't know
because
if that's correct.
it's in New Beijing.
Right, New Beijing. So I base that China, but I say Asia because I feel like other Asian cultures got pulled into that
Right.
inadvertently. But that's a discussion for later.
Yeah, because they formed
Anyhow.
It was New Commonwealth, I think it was what it's called.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Which is kind of like the UN. But anyhow, Cinder has this, like, mechanics stall in which she kind of sells her wares and her services as a mechanic just because she's naturally inclined towards it. And one day, the prince of the Commonwealth named Kai comes with this AI, and he's like, I need you to repair this. She's like, dude, it's super old. Why? He's like, it's sentimental. Please just do it. But what she doesn't know is that there's very important information contained within this android. And then in this world, we also have a race of people living on the moon called Lunars. And they have, like, powers of, like, camouflage and, like, deception and stuff. And so Luna is trying to form an alliance through marriage to Prince Kai to their queen, Queen Lavana. And obviously she's the big bad of the series. And yes, I think that's all the info I really need to give at the moment.
Yeah, in other words,
That's
this
kind
is
of
a
brief
Cinderella
overview.
retelling. Yeah.
Yes, the rest is very much a Cinderella retelling with a few tweaks that I appreciated.
Yeah, because we have Cinder's stepsisters. We got Peony and I never remember the other stepsister.
Pearl.
Thank you, Pearl. And then we also have sort of, I think of Aiko as the fairy godmother.
Aika in a lot of ways is, though.
Like, she saved the dress that Cinder ended up wearing. And she kind of opened Cinder up into this, like, grand scheme of not only being a mechanic kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have the whole ball that is the main point of at least this novel right here. Which, just seeing all those elements come into play, it's always fun to watch.
Yes, I completely agree. Mm-hmm. So, initial thoughts on a reread, I think I enjoyed it better than I did the first time because I had all the Easter eggs to go hunt and find as I was reading, because I had not reread it since I had completed the series. So this is my first true reread. Mm-hmm. I think I've technically read Cinder 3 times now, but the first time I read it, I think I only got like halfway through because I got distracted. I was in the middle of my divorce and stuff. That's about the time I was reading it. And then I reread it again once things like calmed down so that I retained all the information. And then this time. So it's still been like 7 years since I've read it. And the series, Marissa Meyer made it very clear that she knows exactly what she's doing through the entirety of the series in this first book. Every main like POV that we see through the rest of the series is mentioned in this first book. And I never caught on to that. Obviously, on a first read before the other books are released, you're not going to, because you don't even have the titles of some of them. But the fact that it was so woven together from the beginning, she knew where she wanted to start and she knew where she wanted to end. Like, it was just so clear in this first book. And I just loved that so much. And one of the other big things that stood out to me is, even though on page, Kai and Cinder really don't have a ton of time together on page, all of their time together was so, like, fantastically rewarding to me. I thoroughly enjoyed their dynamic on page. I mean, even towards the end when everything goes to crap, like, I still love their dynamic together because both of their reactions to the situation feel very realistic for the situation that they're in and their backgrounds that you already have at this point. And obviously you're getting information separately that the others within that relationship don't know. So we see the big picture, but they don't. And so their reactions, because they don't see the big picture, are always very, like, on point. And I really liked that.
I have to agree. It's been, like I said, it's been about 5 years since I did the original. And I read the first 3 books back to back to back. Uh-huh. So they're all grouped into one cohesive mass in my brain because it was literally 3 days in which I read all 3 of those books.
Yeah.
So just going back and separating out where things kind of start and end and getting a feel for where we really started to get to know Cinder. And by the way, there will probably be spoilers for Cinder in this live show discussion at this point.
Whoops, I forgot.
Just throwing that out there. And
I didn't say anything too bad, though.
Yeah.
I think I did pretty...
Just pointing out some of those Cinderella-type elements. But you could probably guess at some of those since Cinderella's so well-known. But the fact that, you're right, she wove Cress into this. She wove Winter into this. And you get to see the start of Scarlet's tale, which is the next book in all of that. When we start to talk about some of the armies that Lavanna is apparently, or has had for a while, and we don't quite understand why we're just now seeing this. Yeah. I find fascinating.
It's like, excuse me, sir, why?
Yeah. And I have to say, doing this reread and now knowing more about Marissa Meyer and her love of Sailor Moon and starting...
I see so much of it now that I've actually read Sailor Moon. Because I hadn't read Sailor Moon the first time I read it. Right. But so much of that, like, the whole thing with Prince Kai, like, being at Queen Lavanna's mercy and some things like that, I never would have picked up on the Sailor Moon references until this read.
Right. Well, and it's like, when I first read it, I had some of those feels, and I thought maybe it was just me because I have such a
because you're a Sailor Moon fan, girl.
Series, and I've read so much fanfic, and I've written so much fanfic that I'm like, maybe I'm projecting. But then going back and then seeing some of her interviews and other people talking about it, I mean, you have Lavanna, who is Queen Beryl. You have Kai, who is Prince Edamon. And then the fact that Cinder originally is a lost moon princess, which is Serenity, but at the same time, she, like, flipped the personality so that it's more of Sailor Jupiter than Sailor Moon. I appreciate because
which I think lands much better.
Because I've always liked her personality a little bit more than Usagi because she's not grown up enough for my taste at this point in time.
No, she's just the immature, lovable dork. Like, that's who she is.
Yeah.
And she acts so dumb, even though, like, they portray her as Sailor Moon so intelligently that I was always like, this is part of my issue with this series.
Yeah. So you have
Let her be smart, dang it. Don't make her a buffoon.
Yeah. So we have a character who is more grounded and has more of an appreciation for building and making and doing stuff with your hands and that kind of intelligence rather than just whatever Usagi is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I liked seeing all of those and knowing where it's going in the future and how we slowly come together in things that I don't necessarily want to talk about yet. I'm looking forward to the other live shows for that. But
yes,
all of those hidden elements I definitely liked in this reread.
So very much.
And I do have to agree, Kai and Cinder, they don't get a lot of time. And
I always remembered them getting a lot more page time. Yeah. And then when I was rereading it, I'm like, man, they're really not in the same place getting, like, page time together very often at all. But we get both of their POVs, and so we still feel like we spend a lot of time with them. And I think that's where the balance is. I do wish we would have gotten a little more on-page time with them. But in the original Cinderella tale, they don't have a lot of on-page time together. So it completely, like, I get why that choice was made in a lot of ways. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of liked it because it wasn't this, like, instant connection. I mean, you could see how the connections were starting, but it didn't feel like insta-love. I mean, because
no, it didn't feel like insta-love.
Who is this guy? I mean, like, and then she's stumbling over herself, and then she's like, well, he's kind of nice. Yeah. And I kind of enjoy talking with him, but I understand that he's a prince, and this isn't something that's gonna happen. This isn't a thing. And just
and then he's like, be my date to the ball, and she's like, no, you don't want me as your date.
Yeah, and you
like,
can see
all of their reactions are so realistic. I loved that.
Right, and you can see that he's not necessarily pursuing this because he's got this, like, huge attraction to her, but he likes the conversation he has with her, and he's trying to use her as a buffer.
Yeah.
And he knows that.
Because he needed a buffer from Queen Lavanna, man.
Right. Which, I mean, makes you understand a little bit more on the other end, at the end, when we reach that climax, and he does kind of flip on her a little bit, seemingly, because she isn't his end goal. The kingdom is. And so it feels really harsh, but at the same time, it's like, this isn't about his love or that connection or anything like that. This isn't what this story is about. This is about billions of people.
They're attracted to each other and they enjoy each other's personalities. They haven't made big commitments to each other, and they're still relative strangers to each other.
Right.
I mean, they know some things back and forth and have had a good rapport, but they aren't so deeply entrenched in their relationship that this would truly be like a betrayal in the full sense of a betrayal.
Yeah, and he's definitely coming to terms with the fact that, like, I don't know a lot about this person, this cyborg, this apparently princess of the moon that he doesn't quite know yet. But this lunar person.
This lunar, who's also a cyborg, which he has feelings about that as well. Like, all of it was just, it all compounded him in his face. And of course he's going to react and do what's best for his kingdom in that moment. And because it was a public forum, he had to stand up for his country, not for this girl that he might have feelings for, but he realizes he really doesn't know a lot about.
Right.
And in a lot of that, Cinder doesn't know a lot about herself anymore. So there's that too.
Right. And so sorry.
Oh, no.
You got more to say? No, that's fine.
No, I was going to move on, so go ahead.
Yeah. No, well, see, and I was going to, since we're talking about some of the more devastating things that happened in this book, the 2 losses that we have in this book that, even going back and rereading this, hit really, really hard.
They still hit so hard, oh my gosh.
Just saying goodbye to Peony.
Yeah.
And then learning about the destruction of Aiko.
Yeah. Like, and having them back to back in the novel like that just made it worse.
Right.
For poor Cinder.
It all snowballed all at once, and all of a sudden it's like, well...
Yeah, we were buddy reading this, and all of that landed in the same buddy read day, and I was hoping it would break up. Like, I was hoping we would get a page cut in there. But man, it all hit in that one day, and I can't lie, I was a mess at home. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how hard this part was. And yeah, it was just so good. Like, I've always really enjoyed this series, but I feel like it hits different once you have all the pieces. Just like with any series as you reread it, or even any book as you reread it, you'll catch things that you don't necessarily catch on a first read. And it was fun because we did buddy read this with Lindsay, and it was Lindsay's first read of it. And so it's one of those things where she was theory crafting, and we're just like, oh, you gotta wait and see. And it was just really fun to do it that way. And yeah, Peony, she was just the only friend that Cinder had outside of Aiko. And Adri took the only other friend she had. I mean, once Peony got sick, she just got even more lethal than she already was. Like, Adri was the perfectly depicted stepmother for a Cinderella tale. Every time she did something again, I was just like, what the crap, woman? What is your deal? What is your beef? Why? Like, it all didn't make sense to me. So it's just one of those things where I continued to have my hate grow as I read. And on a second read, I think it's even more intense.
Yeah. And I was gonna talk about the buddy read that we had with Lindsay.
Oh my gosh, Lindsay, you read that part during work?
Yeah.
What crap, girl?
I had to bring that up because she summed it up just right there in that caption.
Yeah, why?
Complete devastation.
Oh my gosh.
That is just going to destroy you. So yes, there are certain
especially
parts.
Because as Lindsay was like theory crafting, she's like, save Peony, and I'm just sitting here thinking, oh, this is gonna hit Lindsay hard.
Very, very much so. But yeah, it is fun to see it from a fresh pair of eyes that doesn't know what the end goal of all of this is, and kind of reminding me of where my brain was at when I first read this book, of all the things that I was slowly starting to put together that may or may not have come to fruition in the correct order. But yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed that. Yeah,
I completely agree. But all in all, like, it still holds up.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't feel like there was any super problematic tropes in this one, because any of the really problematic things that happen in Cinderella were kind of all buffed out in this one anyway. Like the whole insta-love thing. And I just think for a retelling, honestly, I really think it's this series that like sealed the deal that I really enjoy retellings. And I think that's why I also get particular and get kind of cranky at once. that take too many liberties and they become an inspired by rather than a retelling because of this series. Because all of the Cinderella notes are there in spades, but she made little tiny tweaks, and that's what a retelling should do. So she modernized certain parts of the story that made it just better.
Agreed.
And more enjoyable.
Well, and I think the fact that she chose to set it all up how she did set it up, she set it up in an Earth-type place, but in a future that doesn't necessarily explain how it got there, so you can't, like, pull that apart. And then with this dynamic that just, it holds up in a way that just makes sense, where we've got the Lunars who have this manipulative nature to them.
Yeah.
And I think that is what really pulls all of this through is
the manipulation factors.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because we haven't even gotten to the part of talking about Dr. Erland at all yet. We haven't even talked about him.
Yeah, no,
the problematic man that he is, and I want to say who he really is, but I can't.
Right. That's, I mean, like I said, it's another one of those, like, now that you're rereading it, and you remember at the very beginning all of the feelings that you have towards certain characters, but knowing how things are going to play out, it changes the dynamic a little bit, because you start to understand why.
Yeah.
So he is a character at the very beginning, especially since he's dealing with this thought process of cyborgs being disposable.
Right.
For an end goal to save the rest of humanity.
Right.
It's hard to like him as a character, and then you have this thing going on with him that you don't fully understand, because he's starting to go a little bit crazy.
A little bit.
Yeah. And then you learn that he's lunar, and he has this ability to manipulate you, which makes it 10 times worse, because you have no natural defense against him.
Right. And because he's so naturally lies as well. I mean, he was naturally lying to Kai. He was naturally lying to Cinder. Like, you just couldn't even. But then, you couldn't hardly keep up with his lies.
Yeah. And then you start to see that this whole cyborg thing was related to trying to find the Lunar Princess.
Yeah.
But it's hard to still justify the fact of everything he's been doing to these cyborgs for that end goal.
Exactly.
And there's just... I remember the loathing I had for this man.
As soon as you found out that that's what he was really looking for, not a cure, I was so upset.
Right. But then there was also the side fact that he was using his own blood to try and cure this illness.
Right.
So he has something to him. It's just hard to see it through the rest of the manipulative nature.
Right. And it's one of those things where I felt like he only would draw his blood on occasion so that, like, his search could continue. So that even in and of itself was a manipulation. And so that was just so hard to swallow. Even harder on the second read when you know more about him and where things are going to go with him in the series. Like I said, it just was even harder for me to, like, get behind and enjoy him like I did the first time. That's the one thing that probably was colored the most in my reread was my feelings about him.
Yep. No, I totally understand. Because you also, because it is a reread, you are also start to, those connections, you're like, well, if we just did this, it would clear up so much, and we wouldn't have to go through all these things that we are about to go through.
Right. But the journey is half the fun. There would be no story without the journey.
Yep. And we wouldn't get to meet some of the characters that we're going to meet in the next book and the following book. Right. And it's just...
We're going to get to some of my favorites in this next one. Let's just say Cinder gains a companion in prison. And I like said companion a lot. One of my favorite characters from the whole series.
Yep. Yep. I would definitely have to agree.
Then
right up there with Aiko.
Right. So next up, we've got Scarlet. That's what we're going to be doing in March. We're going to be doing this for the next couple months. So, yes, Scarlet will be at the end of the month on my channel, since it's March 1st. So it'll be the end of this month on my channel. Right. The last Sunday, same time. And
I think that's the 29th.
Yeah, I think that's the right day. That mathematically sounds right. Yeah, mathematically 29 is the right number. But yes, I'm really excited to get everybody's thoughts, not only on Cinder, but on Scarlet and the rest of the series as we go along. In Scarlet, we're getting a little Red Riding Hood retelling. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited because I went into Scarlet with kind of negative feelings with how it starts off because I was so invested in what happens in Cinder that the way Scarlet started off kind of put me off it for a minute.
Right.
And so my rating of that one was naturally lower on the first read. So I'm really interested to see how I feel upon reread, since I know I'm going to get the information that I want.
Just a slightly different avenue.
Yes. So, yes. Is there anything else we want to say about Cinder before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I am going to be doing a book defacing on the rest of the Luna Chronicles. I have
Yay, I'm so excited to see those. Yes.
Yeah. And I've got ideas forming. So Scarlet I'm going to do next month, and I'm just going to coincide each book defacing with the month that we're doing the reread.
Got it.
That should be fun. I think that's the only other thing that I have to mention.
Yeah, my first two in that series are paperbacks, so I couldn't deface them well if I wanted to.
Well, I luckily found them on Better World Books. They were like
nice.
$2 a piece. So
wow.
I got like all 4 of them. I mean, they're all used library books, but I didn't plan on using them as reading copies.
Right.
Because you can't get the pages apart at this point. They're
printed
together.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Well, excellent. Yes.
Yeah, we have hit our half hour. So I am going to go let everybody go. And of course, if you haven't checked out Shae's channel yet, you totally should. It is very amazing. She just got new bookcases that are phenomenal. So, yes.
I did a whole vlog assembling them and everything, so you can watch me be a total nerd if you want and mess things up and all of that good stuff. But it was a good time.
Yes. So go check her out. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all of the mess and chaos that always happens on my channel, subscribe. And of course, always read with us because that's what we love. So feel free. Oh, I just keep hitting. Feel free to join us for any of our book club reads because we would just love to discuss with you guys. And thank you for hanging out with us today. And I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.
Bye.